Welcome to the first part of the series of how to get good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Or how not to suck at Yu-Gi-Oh! Rather. Uh, this is a series that I decided to make because there's a lot of people that really cannot understand the basic rules of the competitive game, like the basic foundations and the basic deck building tactics, etc. So I think this is a great place to start so you can get like better really quickly. So for this first part, I don't know how many parts this video is going to have, but it's going to have like several parts. But this first part is focused and centered about the roles of the cards. Like many people, especially when they are too new into the game, they tend to not realize what the role or the function of the card they are playing is trying to accomplish in their deck. So the first thing I want to do is to explain the card categories, the modern card categories, and then you're going to have a better understanding of how to deck build. So first up, we have the starter cards. These are the cards that you want to open with and are cards that basically start your plays. Um, these categories can be really diffuse at some times. That's why it's important for you to really understand them and see on a deck by deck basis which role they are performing. For example, Armageddon Knight is a card that basically, when it was at 3 copies, it basically lead the game himself by dumping Destiny Hero Malicious and then link summon Isolde to Tales of the Noble Knights. And then basically milled 4 equip spells to summon another copy of himself. In the first cases in Irio, he's a starter card, and in the second cases in Irio, where Isolde summons him, he's another card completely different. His function is completely different. He's giving you extra plays you didn't have before. So that's why I'm telling you this is diffuse, but everything is going to be more clear as we move forward into the video, right? So then we have like Neo Space Connector, Tour Guide, Madolche Magellan, Madolche Angeli, Fluffle Bear, Machina Gear Frame, Pot of Extravagance, or Corset Edland, or even Unexpected Die as cards you want to start your games with. They are cards literally, they are the cards that literally lead your game. So that's the definition of a starter. Cards that allow you to start your plays. That's pretty much it. And then we have another category which is called extenders. This is the most common category in the whole game, but not all extenders are made equal. So what happens, some extenders are just better than others. So some of those are more situational, some of those are better, but usually, that's why usually we have 3 categories of extenders. Like we have superior extenders, we have additional extenders, and we have conditional extenders. So first up, the superior extenders. These superior extenders are cards that allow you to keep playing after your opponent's disruptions, and they don't have like a hefty activation cost. They are really easy to activate and to follow up through. In this category, we have cards like Reinforcement of the Army, Heritage of the Chalice, Elixir of Black Awakening, Pot of Desires, or Machina Reformation. This is important. These cards I actually highlight because these cards can actually act as starters or as extenders. Reinforcement of the Army like could grab you an starter card or could grab you an extender card. So that's why I put it here. The same for a Dash of the Chalice. If you're playing a Netlich deck, Elixir of Black Awakening is going to be your starter card because it's what puts the Golden Boy into the play. But in a zombie deck, it's going to act as an extender because it's going to grant you another zombie so you can keep playing. So it's important. The same for Pot of Desires. Many people has this debate of whether Pot of Desires is an starter or an extender, and it's going to depend on a deck by deck basis. For example, back row based decks, it's going to be an starter because it's going to dig you for more cards. And in a combo deck, it's usually going to be an extender or a card that re-raises your ceiling. That's a category we're going to see later, but it's really not going to be an starter card. So keep that in mind. And the same for Machina Reformation. This either can search an extender like Gearframe, the Go Starter like Gearframe, or an extender like the new Machinas or like Machina Fortress, right? Then we have, again, these I could like categorized as hybrids between an starter and an extender because they can perform both roles. And then these are just the superior extenders like Brigandine, Gawain, Magician Souls, Danger Jackalope, Danger Tsuchinoko are superior extenders. Why are they superior extenders? It's because they have easy activation costs. Like you basically just play the card and have an additional play. They special summon themselves, so it's basically really simple. Then we have additional extenders. The difference between additional extenders and conditional extenders is because that these require like higher activation costs. They are not so easy to activate. For example, to play like Danger Tsuchinoko, you just have to play the card, literally, do what the card says. But to play Dark Art Dragon, you need a serious condition, in this case it's just one condition, to have only three dark monsters in your graveyard to special summon it. That's why it's an additional extender. Blackluster Soldier and Wolf are basically just the same. Then we have some other examples of additional extenders, which are Six Samurai United or Spiral Gear Big Red. These cards are basically cards that allow you to extend your plays, but they need setup. So again, let's wrap up the different superior extenders. They have easy activation costs, and additional extenders, they need requirements to be played. In both cases, both type of extenders award you extra plays. Then we have the conditional extenders. These conditional extenders, like its name implies, are extenders that need a condition to be met. They basically have defensive connotations. Like the difference between conditional and additional. Conditional is that it requires on your opponent mostly, and conditional requires on your opponent mostly, and additional requires on yourself. So that's basically it. And then we have stuff like Phantasme, we have Machina Overdrive, we have Maxi, we have Abysphere and Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine as some examples. That these cards allow you to extend your plays, but they require your opponent to be playing, or they require you to go to your opponent's turn, which is the main difference with this type of extenders. Then we have the bombs. The bombs are the cards that are basically not that good at the early stages of the game, but that are impressive the longer the game goes. These cards basically you want to see them because they're basically win buttons, like cards that you can win a game with instantaneously. So in this category we have like Soul Charge, Super Rejuvenation, Machine Duplication, Card Destruction, and Judgment Dragon. I mean, most of those cards, with the exception of Card Destruction and Machine Duplication, which both require a serious deck dedication to be mostly effective, are not that good at the early game. I mean, Soul Charge is now good at the early game because the speed of the game is faster, but in 2014 it wasn't that good at the beginning of the game. So these cards basically can change the outcome of a game if you top deck them, but they are not consistent. That's why they are bombs. They are like impressive cards that give you an unfair advantage, but are not really that consistent. Then we have defense. In defense we have two categories, like reactive and defense that can be changed. So we have reactive defense and chainable defense. The main difference, like its name implies, is that reactive defense is a card that it basically needs to be chained directly to the threat or the thing you are trying to stop. And chainable defense are cards that are far less powerful, but that can still work after the threat is dropped. So I'm gonna show you a few examples so it's more clear. So Ash Blossom needs to be chained directly to a card to the card is going to negate, like Pot of Extravagance and stuff. And then Ghost Bell is in the same boat. Solemn Judgment is like a classic example. Then we have Solemn Warning. Then we have Bottom's Trap Hold. I mean, if you draw these cards after the threat you wanted to negate has already resolved, they are no good. So that's it. And then on the other hand, we have the chainable defense, which are compulsory evacuation device, enemy controller. I put another copy of Machina Overdrive here as well. We have the Artifact Sanctum, and we have the Infinite Impermanence. Right? What happens here is, for example, let's say your opponent has like a Stardust Dragon, and you draw Bottomless Trap Hole. In that scenario, Bottomless Trap Hole, I mean, Bottomless is a bad example, you get the Solemn Warning. Your opponent summons Stardust Dragon, and your next draw is Solemn Warning. And at that point, the solemn warning is not good because the threat was already dropped. In exchange, if you drew like compulsory evacuation device, you could still deal with the threat, even if it has been dropped before. So that keep that in mind when you try to make a balanced defense and understand the different type of defenses. Usually chainable defenses are much weaker than reactive defense for obvious reasons, but yeah, keep that in mind. I put here the Machina Overdrive because it can summon the new Machina Citadel, which is basically a Raigeki, which is good before or after the fact, so that's why it's here. Then we have cards that re-raise your ceiling. I mean, ceiling is the number of total plays you can do in a single turn. So these cards basically nullify some of the threats or the disruption your opponent is putting so you can play. Uh, at this point, I mean, the classic example is Call by the Grave, which basically they play a hand trap, you play Call by the Grave, and then you re-raise your ceiling. It's sort of an extender, but not really. It's a weird spot. That's why it has like its own classification. So yeah, in the same vein, Street Tactical Talents. I mean, they activate a hand trap and then or a monster effect negation, and then you punish them. The same for Lightning Storm. It's a card that is dedicated to eliminate background. Then we have Forbidden Lands, pretty much the same thing. And then these cards that re-raise your ceiling can also be in-theme cards or part of the engine cards. The engine cards are your cards that perform your main strategy, right? So these cards that re-raise your ceiling that are part of your engine are basically cards that are searchable through your engine. A classical example is Lila, Last Words on Series. For example, let's say your opponent has, I don't know, the card, there can only be one, right? Which is the first card that came to mind. Uh, or lose one turn, whatever. It's just whatever. And you have like two Judgment Dragons in your hand. So what happens here is that Lila is going to pop up the lose one turn. In that scenario, she's going to re-raise your ceiling because your Judgment Dragons will be actual threats when they drop into the field. So that's why she's here. Cards that re-raise your ceiling are basically cards that either negate one of your opponent's disruptions or destroy one of your opponent's cards. It's going to depend. In the case of lands, it's not going to destroy anything, but it's still going to protect you from something your opponent threw at you. And then we have the last category, which is engine requirements. And engine requirements are basically the famous garnets. This is why I put garnet here. This is a term that is basically attached to Patrick Hoban. The garnet, I mean, it's not common to see nowadays. People is still talking about garnet when we talk about engine requirements because garnet was that famous. So yeah, these are cards that are basically bad to draw and bad in many and multiple scenarios, but you need them to perform a specific action. So for example, to resolve Brilliant Fusion, you need a Garnet, or well, you might play another Gem Knight, but you still need a card with a similar function. Then you have like Orion, which is a key card for the new Hulky Febrax combos. Then you have Scrap Golem, which is key for the Scrap Recycler combos. Then we have like Aqua Dolphin, which is like an engine requirement for New Space Connector. And then we have like any whip spell. Like I put this because it's one of the most useless one to draw. I mean the card's not bad, but it's useless to draw as a lone card. So this is an engine requirement for Isolde. So that's it. So okay, let's wrap up the video with the concepts we just replaced. Keep in mind that this is just the basis so we can build more consistent decks. So because we have templates, like for 40 cards there's more or less a set amount of starter cards that we want to see. The same for cards that that increase your ceiling or increase your ceiling, cards of the bombs or the extenders. That's more or less a set number. So that is the template we're going to use for you to learn how to deck build better, right? So first we have the starter cards that you want to start the game with. Then we have extenders. We have superior extenders which have low activation requirements. Then we have additional extenders which are extenders extenders that need some conditions to be met, and they are not as easy to activate as superior extenders, but that still grant you more plays during your own turn. Then we have reactive extenders, which are cards that need your opponent to perform an action to grant you an additional card. So that's it. And then we have the bombs. The bombs are cards that basically are not good at the early game or need specific setups to be incredibly good, but that can easily win you a game. So they are that. Then we have defense, which can be reactive or chainable. Reactive is more powerful, chainable is usually less powerful. However, chainable can be used after the threat is dropped, and reactive defense is not good before the threat is dropped. So now the cards that re-raise your ceiling are cards that allow you to deal with your opponent's threats or negations, so you can play more cards per turn. And then basically we have the engine requirements. So keep hooked to part 2, in which I'm gonna show you the proportion, the ideal mathematically proportion you want to have for a 40 card deck, using these categories to deck build properly. I mean, it's going to change on a deck by deck basis, but you are going to have to keep those numbers as close as possible to the template I'm gonna give you. Usually, I mean, we're going to have exceptions and stuff, but you're usually going to want to have that, so you keep in mind that. And that's pretty much it. See you on the next time.